Good morning. Welcome to Plugged In. New subject right after this. Hey, we're glad that you're back with us. We were done with Daniel, and thank you for listening to all of that for the last few weeks. We're going to embark on a different subject. We're going to go to the New Testament. So I'm going to introduce that this week. I'm going to introduce it by way of asking you this question. So let's just suppose that you're in a small group study in a living room or a traditional Sunday school class, and the instructor, the leader, teacher, whoever it might be, asks the question, what are some key traits or characteristics of someone who is a follower of God? What would your answer be? I took the liberty to put some answers together. Maybe what I've given or what I'm going to give to you might be some of your answers. I'm going to give some scripture with it. In just a little while, Pete's going to put a scripture up on the board, but I'm going to give you some other scriptures before then. But let's say the question asks, what are some traits or characteristics of those who follow God? So, for example, here's one answer that might come. That is following the greatest commandment. That greatest commandment, Jesus said, is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's found in Matthew chapter 22. Someone in the group might answer following the golden rule. That's a rule that we need to follow in today's world. That's a good sign. Jesus said this in the Sermon on the Mount: in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. We kind of practice that differently. Do to others what they've done to you. That's how we usually read that. But Jesus taught, in everything, do to others what you would have them to do to you. Some might say a good trait or characteristic is that person who is walking in the Spirit. And they might refer to Galatians chapter 5, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We could even take larger sections of Scripture to indicate that it is a good sign that someone is following God. For example, obeying the 10 Commandments, all of them. Practicing being a good Samaritan to others. Or don't be quick to cast the first stone. In other words, examine your own life as well. All of these answers and teachings are valid, and I believe that they are good indications that one has chose to walk in the way that pleases God. But there's another trait that I want to point out. In fact, Scripture teaches us that without this trait, it is impossible to please God. So it seems to me like this is a pretty important trait. If Scripture itself even says, if you don't do this, you're not pleasing God. So what I want to do is read for you, first of all, the biblical definition of this subject. It's going to appear up on your screen. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 and 2. Here's what it says. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. But if you read a little further in chapter 11 of Hebrews, verse 6, we find these words. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. In verse 1, we have two key words. Sure and certain. At least in the older versions, it will say, now faith is being sure of what we hope for, certain of what we do not see. And these two qualities need a secure beginning and ending point. The beginning point of faith is believing in God's character. He is who he says. Whatever God says of himself, that's who he is. And the end point is believing in God's promises. He will do what he says. When you and I believe that God will fulfill his promises, even though we don't see those promises materializing just yet, we demonstrate true faith. So here's what's going to happen over the course of the next few weeks. We're going to take a journey through Hebrews 11. There are a lot of familiar names there from Old Testament Sunday school class. Some of us grew up in those times where we had flannel graphs and these little paper characters. And those old stories of Noah and Abraham, Moses, Isaac. We've got David and Daniel and others. So what we're going to do is go through those just very simply. And each week we're just going to kind of talk about what the Hebrew writer pointed out about their faith and how what they did can connect to our lives. So I'm hoping that you'll be a part of this each week. I'm looking forward to this journey. What a chapter to go through. And more than likely, we will move right into at least the first part of chapter 12 of Hebrews when we begin to bring this to a close, because it actually is a connection to chapter 11. So we're going to be talking on the idea of exemplifying and modeling great faith. So I hope you'll be with us each week with Plugged In, and have a wonderful week this week, and we'll see you next Monday on Plugged In.